G'day everyone and welcome back to another video on the channel. And today in this video we're going to be ranking some sports. I'm going to be going over them and judging whether I like them or not, seeing which sports I like the most. I think we all know which sport I like the most, but mainly to see which sports I like the least. So the tiers we got here are best of the best. Got enjoyed a lot, good sport, okay sport I guess, boring as batshit, and then we've got the last tier which is obviously the worst as shouldn't be a sport. Now, myself, I don't particularly follow too many sports too deeply. There are only maybe 3 or 4 sports where I really follow. I'm not only basing on how much I follow the sport, but also on a couple other factors in terms of how enjoyable the sport is to watch, as well as how enjoyable the sport is to play. Alrighty, so the first sport here, we've got AFL, and for anyone who is actually watching this, I have an AFL channel, so it's quite obvious that this is going to go in best of the best. I've loved it since I can remember. So definitely that is the sport I follow the most. American football. I've never been a fan of American football. In fact, for most American sports, I don't really rate American sports that much. But American football, I feel like it's a very overrated sport. There are too many stoppages in the game. They wear all these pads, helmets, and all that sort of stuff. But like, they don't in rugby, they don't AFL, so yeah, are we saying that in America is softer? It's probably going to go in either okay or boring. It's probably boring as batshit. I don't care if there are all these Americans watching this video. I'm sorry, but if you haven't watched AFL, go watch AFL and then watch NFL again and just compare the two sports in terms of just the overall entertainment value. Next sport we have here is badminton. Yeah, I don't enjoy it. I've played it a few times in PE here and there, and I just never really enjoyed it. It's a poor man's tennis, really. It's essentially just tennis, but with a smaller racket, smaller court, but they use a shuttle instead of a ball. I mean, if you're good at badminton, it is a fun game to play, but I've never been that good at the game, and I never really enjoyed it. It's a bit boring, really. Definitely don't follow badminton. I don't think there's a single person out there watching this who follows intensely in the professional badminton leagues. Probably going to chuck it in boring as batshit. I'm almost going to put it below American football because I feel like it's a little bit too harsh if I have badminton higher than American football. There's just more variables in American football to make the game a little bit more interesting, whilst badminton's just hitting the shuttle or whatever it is up and down. Next up, we've got baseball. Again, another American sport which I don't really rate at all. My PE teacher that had played baseball, so because of that, we were always stuck playing baseball like almost every second PE lesson, which was quite annoying because it was like, it's not that good of a sport. Australia aren't really into baseball. Why are we playing baseball every second lesson? I don't know. I don't think it's that good of a sport. I think it's a little bit better than American football. Like, I'd actually probably watch a baseball game over an American football game. But at the same time, whenever I watch on YouTube baseball clips, it's got nothing to do with the actual game. It's more to do with the crowd. Like, I feel like half the crowd aren't even there for the baseball game. They're just there for the overall atmosphere and experience. So I'll probably chuck in an okay sport. We've got pool or billiards or whatever you want to call it. Snooker. It's actually fun to play. Like, it's sort of hard comparing a sport like snooker or whatever to a sport like footy or NFL. I mean, there is a lot of skill involved in this sport. I enjoy playing it, but I wouldn't really watch. In fact, it's somewhat entertaining to watch a game of snooker. If you're watching the professionals play, I'd watch that over a few sports in this list. So I'm honestly going to chuck it. I'll chuck it below baseball, but honestly, I'm chucking above NFL. Next sport we have is temping bowling. Another one that is borderline almost calling it a sport because there's no real movement or action involved. Like, usually when you're playing a sport, you're getting active, you're up and about, but you're just rolling the ball along the ground, as Nick would say. I like going bowling. I'm not a pro or anything like that. I just like going to, zone bowling for a bit of fun. But yeah, I don't know. Bowling isn't the most entertaining sport to watch. I think it's a lot more entertaining, in my personal opinion, to watch amateurs bowl than to watch professionals bowl. I don't know why, but that's like one of the few sports where I prefer to watch amateurs play than professionals. I'm actually going to chuck it in good. Next sport we have is boxing. I never liked boxing. I don't understand the hype in UFC or whatever boxing tournament there. I just never understood the hype. It's just throwing punches. Like, there was a little period where I sort of got into it and I sort of got around it, but honestly, I never watch a boxing game. I don't really see the hype in boxing in itself as a sport. It's just people hitting each other. There are some moments in boxing that I guess are somewhat interesting, like knockouts and stuff like that, or broken legs or whatever. But for the most part, yeah, boxing isn't really my cup of tea. And if anyone asked me about boxing, I wouldn't give myself much of an opinion. I'd probably almost chuck it below. Yeah, I'll probably chuck it below NFL. The next sport we have here is cricket. And I think this is quite an easy one for me. I'll chuck it in, enjoy it a lot. It's not as good as footy. I think we all can establish that I enjoy footy the most out of any sport, but cricket is probably, or you could almost definitely say, my second favourite sport. I follow it quite closely in itself. I always, get around the Australian cricket team and also the Renegades in the BBL. But yeah, as an Aussie, you sort of have been brought up to like cricket. You can't really not like cricket as an Aussie, to be fair. The cycling, again, I don't know, it's just boring. Like the Tour de France, I don't see how people could actively watch it. If you're just watching kilometre 14 out of 42 in a cycling tournament, I can't see how it could be interesting to anyone. I'd almost chuck it to shouldn't be a sport. Like, I won't put it there. I'll probably chuck it below boxing. And another sport which is probably in the similar territory is F1 or car racing or whatever you want to call it. Again, I just never had any interest in this sport, to be completely honest. It's just, personally, for myself, they're just cars circling around laps. Probably boring as batshit, but I will chuck it above. I'll probably chuck it at the top. I can tolerate it at the very most, but it's nothing that I would, get around. Yeah, so far, you might almost think that I hate every sport, but we've got golf, and I don't mind golf. I think golf is almost in good. Like, I wouldn't watch it on TV. You couldn't pay me to watch golf on TV. It's one of the most boring things to watch, really. But I've actually been to the golf a few times. It's actually quite exciting watching the world's best play golf. Particularly when it's close, the final few holes. I actually don't mind it, and it's alright sport to play as well. Like, I don't mind having a hit here and there. I'm not great at golf. I don't often follow it at all, but my dad does, so I'd probably chuck it end of good. Now, I don't know anything about this sport in terms of the teams that play. I've never really watched actually, I've watched a couple games in the Olympics, European Handball, and actually, if I'm going to be completely honest, it's a lot more entertaining to watch than most of these sports. Like, I'd much prefer watching a game of handball than any of these games here, honestly. And whenever we would play this sport in PE, which should be a few times here and there where handball would be brought up, I think in year 8, inter-school sports, that was the sport of choice. So it's actually quite an entertaining game. You use your hand. It's sort of a little bit like soccer. You try to throw it into a soccer net, and then you got a goalie to try and stop it. I actually think it's a good sport. I'd almost chuck it above golf, or even above bowling. Next up, we got field hockey. I actually did follow the hockey roos quite closely in the Olympics, but other than that, I don't really watch the hockey, and I definitely don't play hockey. I remember in year 9, I played hockey for inter-school sports. I was absolutely dog water. I hated it, but the sport in itself was actually not bad at all. So I'd almost chuck it up in good. In fact, I will chuck it above golf. Ice hockey. I applaud the professional ice hockey players, because not only are they, playing a game of hockey and, having to figure out where the puck is, where all the other players are relative to themselves, but they also have to be skating whilst on ice. In terms of actually watching the game, it's quite boring. There are some big hits here and there, but I have never actively watched an ice hockey game because I just don't really... I don't see much value in it, but it's probably better, honestly, probably better than NFL and even F1, so I'll chuck it at the end of okay. Basketball's the next sport here, and it's a pretty popular sport. It's probably one of the most popular sports in the world. I don't enjoy watching it that much, to be completely honest. I'm not the biggest fan of basketball compared to a lot of other people. Like, I don't really follow the NBA. I don't mind it. I can watch a game here and there, but I don't really follow it at all. It's actually quite fun to play, but yeah, I probably wouldn't have it. It's definitely the best American sport. I think, without a doubt, it's the best sport in America that Americans do play. So I'll probably chuck it in good. Well, I'd prefer to watch a basketball game than a handball game, and there's more traction in basketball, well, a lot more than European handball. So we will chuck basketball in the top of good. Now, netball, I'm sorry, but it's going to go bottom of the fucking boring of batshit. Like, I prefer to watch a badminton rally than a netball game. I despise netball. It's just a shitty version of basketball. Like, a much shittier version of basketball. There are just too many stupid rules in netball. Like, I went to my sister's netball games. I hated it. Every 5 seconds, blow the whistle or foul. When I played it in PE, which seemed to be every fucking second week, because I wanted to give girls a chance at playing a sport they liked, I hated this. I hated netball. Gonna go into boring batshit. I'd prefer to play badminton than netball. I'm sorry, but it's just the fact. Next up, we got rugby. Yeah, I'm not a fan of NRL. I've never really actively followed it. I watch it here and there, to be fair, but that's because it's just the sport that we play in Australia. But Not in Victoria. No one gives a crap about rugby in Victoria unless you're a bit of footy. I'm probably chucking in top of okay. And I know NRL fans are going to be watching this saying, how the fuck have you got golf and, you know, bowling above rugby? But I'm sorry, but I'm just not a fan. AFL is a much better sport. Soccer is up next, and I'll probably chuck it here and enjoy it a lot. I think it's my third favorite sport, I'd have to say. I don't really follow club soccer too much. Like, I do actually follow the Premier League. I've been following it a lot more recently, to be fair. I don't really watch the A-League, maybe if it's on. But I enjoy playing it with mates. I played it every lunchtime at school, essentially. You know, I watched the World Cup. You know, soccer's a good sport. I used to play, actually, but now I'm actually shocking at the game. Like, all my mates are better than me, but it's still a fun sport. But definitely cricket is better, but soccer is my third favorite, and that's why I'll chuck it in, enjoy it a lot. I think if we have to have a sport in here, soccer would be the other spot to put it. Tennis comes in next on this Tiermaker, and I'd almost have this as my fourth or fifth favorite sport. It is a good sport. I wouldn't chuck it and enjoy it a lot, but it is one of the sports that I sort of follow. Like, relative to most other sports, I do follow the tennis. Maybe not at all over the winter, but when it's the Australian Open is on, I've started to really pay a lot more interest in tennis. I've been to a few tennis games. It's actually quite enjoyable to watch. I used to hate watching the tennis. But I always liked playing tennis. You know, every time I got a chance to play tennis, I found it fun. So because of that, I am going to chuck it above basketball. I think tennis is better than basketball. I probably prefer to play and watch tennis over the basketball. So that's why I'm going to be chucking it at the top of good. Second last sport we have here is volleyball. I think it's sort of a bang average sport, but I'll chuck it here in good. I don't watch it. I actually find it a very boring sport to watch. But it's actually really fun to play, particularly beach volleyball. Yeah, every time in PE when volleyball would be the game, the sport of choice, I'd be quite excited. I'll chuck bowling higher, only because it's more fun to play. I'll put volleyball higher than hockey, but I prefer to watch a hockey game than a volleyball game. And last up we have water polo. Again, it's just one of those weird sports that, just like badminton, who the fuck watches water polo? Who the fuck actively follows the water polo? No one. Not even in the Olympics I could get around watching a game of water polo. They have to be in elite shape to be able to, you know, swim for however long they do and still have the ability to, you know, stay up above the water, throw the ball, you know, do all that sort of stuff. So, you know, I applaud them for the efforts, but the sport in itself is just a shambles, and I probably wouldn't enjoy playing it myself because I probably wouldn't be able to play it. I'd almost chuck cycling in shouldn't be a sport. Water polo probably shouldn't be a sport. And why is badminton a sport? I can see why netball is a sport, but I don't really see why these three are a sport, to be completely honest. It's a bit weird. Anyways, that's it with my Tiermaker. That's it with my rankings. I'm sure you guys are going to have a different opinion towards me. If you are new to this channel and you just watch me for the first time and don't know what AFL is, go and give it a watch. I'll chuck the link to the What is AFL video made by the AFL. If I could even just get the one new follower of AFL from this video, I'll be happy. But again, yeah, let me know down below your favorite sports. What would you have differently? I'll chuck the link to the Tiermaker in the description. I made it myself. So if you want to, you know, rank it for a video yourself, just give me credit. That'll be all good. And I'll see you soon in my next video.